Alright, it's time to rank my top 10 favorite horror movies of 1988, and of course, do 5 honorable and dishonorable mentions, and give a few other quick shout outs as well. I'm going to talk about a lot of movies because I watched over 70 of them, and that's not even including other movies I watched outside of 1988 movies. I watched over 100 movies this month, and 70 of them were from 1988. So let's get going, shall we? Let's not waste any time. We're going to get rid of the shit first. We're going to talk about the 5 worst movies that I saw from 1988. And arguably, this is a better year than 1987, I will say. And I am thinking at some point, maybe I'll do like a ranking of the years where I go like, this is the best year of the 80s and this is the worst year of the 80s. Something like that. Let me know if that sounds like a good idea. Maybe I'll do it. So, and maybe I'll do a top 100 of the 80s. How's that sound? So, I got ideas. I'm cooking up. Like, what should I do next after this is all over? Because I got one more year left and then it's over. Maybe I'll do the 90s or the 70s. Who knows? So, what is the worst of the worst that I saw from 1988? The worst one of them all, to me, was a movie called Hobgoblins. This is the result you get when you mix an ultra low budget of $15,000 and a script with zero thought put into it. This movie is just a Gremlins wannabe sock puppet using embarrassment with just the most unlikable cast of characters ever. I mean, the main guy's girlfriend is so frigid and he wants to go save her for some reason, and then even the other girl in the movie is so cunty for no reason. The sound effects in this movie are like ripped from cartoons. I feel like I'm watching Halloween 5, and the grenades in this movie do just about as much damage as those poppets you throw, and you can like pop them with your fingers if you snap. The plot of this movie is, of course, very illogical and asinine. You got a security guard who's like, he knows about these hobgoblins and he has them in the safe, and he's like protecting this safe in the building, even though it's like closed and abandoned. So why are they protecting this place? He's the only one who knows that they're in there. Why not just blow them up or burn them or something? Why guard this place for 30 fucking years? Just get rid of them. And the guy who owns this place doesn't even know about the hobgoblins, and he doesn't even believe they exist. There's even a sequence where they're driving a car, and it couldn't be more evident that they're just staying perfectly still. They're stationary. You can even see like a lamppost in the background sitting perfectly still because the car's not actually driving. They didn't try at all to create any illusions in this movie. No effects, nothing. They're just hand puppets. Their faces don't contort or snarl. They don't make faces, nothing. It's just garbage. Skip this movie. It's dog shit. Next up is a movie by a popular Italian director, and a lot of people like this movie. It's got a Blu-ray now from Shout Factory, I think, on like a double disc thing. I watched it over a year ago. Fucking hated it. I didn't even rewatch it for this ranking because I knew I wasn't going to like it. It's terrible. And that movie is Ghost House. This is a movie that was destroyed by annoying repetition. You got a musical cue in this movie that plays every time something sinister is happening, whenever there's like paranormal activity or whatever. It's just this annoying song playing that I just want erased from my mind. It's so annoying. The opening does have a couple of graphic kills, but outside of that, the rest is pretty terrible. The plot really doesn't make much sense, and the characters are, again, unlikable. I mean, it's just your standard group of young kids break into an old, dilapidated haunted house, and then paranormal shit starts happening. Next up is a movie that I think now has over 16 movies, and that is Witchcraft. This is just a cheap, low-budget doll witch movie that doesn't excite nor surprise you by the end. It's very telegraphed, the story, and it's poorly edited. It overuses slide transitions. The best friend, Linda, she was the only likable character in the movie, and she has the best kill, getting decapitated, and then her head's like hanging by a string, like the guy in Blood Rage. I did find it kind of weird that they kept saying that this main girl had the sexy, cool Polish accent, and I didn't hear it at all. Next up is a movie called Through the Fire. This is an unofficial sequel to City of the Living Dead and doesn't even have zombies until the last 5 minutes. Now, the acting in this movie is decent, and there is some good, like, meta humor in a couple of moments that I liked. But this movie's so low budget that the lighting is terrible. It's so pitch black you can't see shit. There's a demon at some point that gets summoned and you never really get a good look at it. So there's like no effects that you see in this movie. There's no gore at all. The story is dull and it's just a boring movie. It's got a very lame climax with just this shootout in some old abandoned building that's pitch black and you can't see what the hell's happening. So yeah, Through the Fire, My last dishonorable mention will go to Grandmother's House. This movie has like two twists in the movie, and one of them's revealed a little too early on, if you ask me, and it's not done effectively. It's not really that much of a shock. And the other one was predictable. It's nice having Brink Stevens in this movie, a Scream Queen, as one of the antagonists of the film. And she seems to be able to teleport numerous times in this movie, like she's Jason and Jason Takes Manhattan. The writing and pacing, the lack of good kills, or any suspense really at all, is the downfall of this movie. Alright, now for the section where I quickly shout out up to 10 movies that are worth checking out that were okay, but just couldn't make my top 10 or even my 5 honorable mentions. So let's get through this. First up, Critters 2. A batch of unhatched critter eggs are mistaken for Easter eggs by the county folk inhabitants of Grover's Bend, and before long, the ferocious furballs are on the rampage again. The Nest. A biological experiment goes haywire when meat-eating mutant roaches invade an island community, terrorizing a peaceful New England fishing village and hideously butchering its citizens. Brain damage. A normal, average guy who lives in New York City becomes dependent on an evil, disembodied brain. Slugs. People are dying mysteriously and gruesomely, and nobody has a clue what the cause is. Only health worker Mike Brady has a possible solution, but his theory of killer slugs is laughed at by the authorities. Sorority babes in the slime ball bowl-rama. When 3 college guys get caught spying on a sorority ritual, they're forced to accompany the pledges on their next assignment, stealing a trophy from a bowling alley, but the token they pinch has a devilish imp who makes their lives a living hell. Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Dream Demon Freddy Krueger is resurrected from his apparent demise and rapidly tracks down and kills the remainder of the Elm Street kids. Fright Night Part 2. After 3 years of therapy, Charlie Brewster, now a college student, is convinced that Jerry Dandridge was a serial killer posing as a vampire. But when Regine, a mysterious actress, and her entourage move into Peter Vincent's apartment block, the nightmare starts again, and this time, it's personal. Dead Heat. LAPD police officer Roger Mortis is killed while arresting zombies who have been reanimated by the head of Dante Laboratories in order to carry out violent armed robberies. Beetlejuice. Thanks to an untimely demise via drowning, a young couple end up as poltergeists in their New England farmhouse where they fail to meet the challenge of scaring away the insufferable new owners. And lastly, Dead Ringers. Elliot, a successful gynecologist, works at the same practice as his identical twin, Beverly. Elliot is attracted to many of his patients and has affairs with them. When he inevitably loses interest, he will give the woman over to Beverly, the meeker of the two, without the woman knowing the difference. Now, Dead Ringers is kind of psychological, so maybe it doesn't deserve to be on this list at all, but whatever. Let's get to my top 10. My number 10, what is it? It is American Gothic. If there was gore and the kills were on screen, this would be the perfect crazy family movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but on an island. I also wish that they would have explored the crazy family on this island a bit more, their background, their history. The score of this movie I thought was very unsettling, and the tone is creepy in the third act. Although it went in a direction that I predicted, the outcome of it was still pretty satisfying. I like that this has Michael J. Pollard from Sleepaway Camp 3, and he's playing once again a weirdo, and it's not too often that your main final girl is crazier than the antagonist. The pacing was good, I just wish that the kills were better. I feel like this movie was censored, and that sucks. And you might argue that this was 87, but it just depends where you look. 87, 88, doesn't matter. I'm counting it for 88, and it is my number 10. Number 9 goes to a movie that spawned 2 sequels and a remake, and that is Night of the Demons. Great opening animation credits and theme music really puts you in the mood for Halloween. Linnea Quigley once again shows off her goods, taking off her top, and we got one of the most iconic scenes ever involving lipstick. There's a little bit of gore in here that I liked. The eye gouging, there's an arm that gets ripped off, there's a nice neck twist. You got the chick from Sleepaway Camp 3, 2 movies in a row that have somebody from that movie, coincidentally enough. And most surprising of all, the black guy lives. One of my only major complaints about this movie is the final girl. I just don't really connect with her. I don't like her really at all. There's not really a lot of character development. I don't really care for her. I think she's a little poorly acted and just kind of annoying. The cinematography is pretty good. I like the funeral home setting. It's atmospheric. I like the way it looks, but the outside the house, like photography out there, I felt like they lit it a little too bright. The end scene with the razor blade, that's pretty funny and gruesome and very loosely connected to the main storyline. Doesn't really need to be here, but I like that it's here. Great ending, and just a fun Halloween movie to watch every Halloween. So check it out if you haven't seen it, and shout out to Justin Smith, who chose this as his favorite from 1988. Number 8 goes to a George Romero film that not a lot of people talk about, and that is Monkey Shines. This is a dark drama sci-fi thriller with an adorable monkey that, of course, turns sinister and homicidal. I thought the animal training in this movie was very impressive. What they make this monkey do, he does a multitude of different tricks throughout the film that were just fun to watch. Now, this movie is a little long. It's close to 2 hours, maybe a little over 2 hours, so maybe it could have been trimmed some. Didn't really need to be that long. And the acting from the lead character, the paraplegic guy, was a little shaky in moments, especially when he was like trying to be extra like pissed off or frightened. Now, the real villain of this movie is the dog in the opening who caused the accident, so that should have been the first victim that the monkey went after. I really like the intense third act and how it all plays out, and the uplifting, hopeful ending for our main character. And I like having the final girl from House on Sorority Row in here. I thought she was good, and you get paraplegic sex. Number 7 goes to a movie that also spawned a franchise. There's a lot of that this year. This one, I think, has 3 sequels, and that is Pumpkinhead. This is a movie that got better on rewatch. It's the most atmospheric movie of the year, in my opinion, with spectacular effects by Stan Winston. The design and look of Pumpkinhead is just awesome looking and unique. I love how vicious he is with his victims, the way he just picks them up, throws them around, shoves their head through windows, drops them onto rocks, stabs them with shotguns like Michael Myers in Halloween 4. He is brutal. I like the simple, like dark fairy tale like story that they're going for here. It's very simple, engaging. It's a revenge tale, and I always like revenge stories. And I like that Lance Henriksen is in this movie playing the lead character. And you even got the guy from Summer Party Massacre 2. A couple of things I don't like about the movie, though, is just how quickly he regrets his decisions. Like, as soon as the Pumpkinhead is resurrected, he's like, "Oh, I take it all back." Like, he should have felt that way maybe after a kill or two. I don't like the way his son is killed. Like, the way that was all shot and done, it's confusing. Like, it's not convincing that would actually kill him. And while the kills are brutal, like I said, they're not really gory and like very on screen. There's not a lot of like carnage. Like, I would expect this Pumpkinhead to be ripping them apart. But outside of those few complaints, I still really enjoy the movie, and that is why I put it all the way here at my number 7. Number 6 goes to a movie that only spawned one sequel by Anthony Hickox, and that is Waxwork. What I really like about this movie is just the great, fun, unique concept it has. It's an amalgam of genres. You got vampires, werewolves, zombies, mummies. You got everything. This movie has a great cast, too. You got David Warner. You got Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman, and even the other people I recognize from other movies. They're not as big, though, so I don't remember their names at all. But a good cast in this film, and the acting was pretty decent. You got a really great, like, chaotic third act in the museum where everything comes to life. It's like Cabin in the Woods, just everything pouring out, everyone in a brawl, lots of blood, some good gory moments, a head getting ripped off of a handicapped dude, a werewolf tearing a guy in half, like a head crush. There's some good bloody moments in this movie, and it's just a great fun concept. It's a horror comedy. There's some, goofy moments in it for sure, but nothing too over the top. Number 5 goes to one of my favorite sequels in this franchise, and that is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Although this movie does have quite a few flaws and things that I would change, I still enjoy it, and I watch it every Halloween. This movie, to me, out of the whole franchise, I think it captures the atmosphere and vibe that you get around Halloween perfectly. Like, from the opening to the closing credits, it just looks the most Halloween. The music is great, and the kills are very creative. The shotgun through the chest, just like Pumpkinhead. And Danielle Harris gives an excellent performance as Jamie Lloyd, and I like the chemistry between her and her sister. And the ending of this movie, I think, is probably the best of the series. It's the most haunting. You got Loomis screaming no, and that great image of Jamie Lloyd holding the scissors, and it's just an awesome ending. It's very bone-chilling, and I just really like having Loomis back in this movie as well. If they didn't bring him back also, this movie probably wouldn't be as good. Unfortunately, though, the mask in this movie is just terrible, and the shoulder pads look of Myers in this one is very noticeable that he's wearing them, and it's just, why? Why would they do that? But still, I can look past some of the little flaws in this movie, and I can still enjoy the ride. And shout out to Diamond Vibes 27, who chose this as their favorite from 1988. Number 4 goes to probably my favorite remake of the 80s, and that is The Blob. This is a terrific remake with cheesy, cool blob effects and hilarious kills. I love that this movie subverts expectations by killing children and killing characters that you thought were going to be in the movie much longer. Like, quite a couple of characters die where I was like, oh shit. Like, I love that this movie does that. Once again, this is a movie with a great cast. You got Kevin Dillon and Shawnee Smith, who make a great leading couple. I like their chemistry as well, and I like, having Jeffrey DeMunn. There's just a lot of character actors in this movie and a lot of familiar faces. I think the writing is smart and the atmosphere is wonderful, and I just think that it's very well shot and very well paced. To me, this is just one of the most perfect popcorn flicks that you can watch any day of the year. And shout out to Redskin Fan and Sassy Pants G and Joey Mert, who chose this as their favorite of 1988. Number 2 will go to a movie that's very campy, no pun intended, and that is Sleepaway Camp 2 Unhappy Campers. Yeah, it's tactically a bad movie, but so damn fun, fast-paced, and entertaining as hell. It makes me a happy camper each viewing. Pamela Springsteen is great as the killer in this movie. Angela and TC is probably my favorite side character besides Angela. I think he's great and probably the best actor in this movie. The humor in this movie is hit and miss. There's some jokes that just don't land, but luckily Angela kills them before they say any more groaners. It's like a slasher spoof that pays homage to a lot of other classics of the decade, like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and it's got lots of breasts being flashed, and it has probably the best, worst way to die ever on film. It's a shame that the final chase isn't that good, especially when you can compare it to other movies. The final chase is very lackluster and just not very well executed, and the music overall is hardly there. There's not a lot of stingers. The music is not as good as the first one, but at least there's a huge body count. There's over 20 kills, some good creative kills in here, and Pamela Springsteen rocks as Angela, and I wish that she would go to conventions and acknowledge that she was in this movie. And shout out to AJC, who chose this as his favorite. Number 2 goes to a movie that has needed a sequel ever since it came out, and they've been talking about it again and again and again, but they haven't done it yet. What the hell are they waiting for? We need a sequel to Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This is just such a fun, silly horror comedy by the Chioda brothers, who did the effects work on the Critters films. The alien clown designs, like the makeup, the way they look, the outfits, what they do with their face, all that stuff is pretty good, and I love that they basically play with every single clown trope and cliche in this movie. It's just like a montage of funny gags they came up with, everything from the popcorn gun to the invisible car to the pies to the face that are actually filled with acid or some shit, and the balloon animal attack dogs. It's absurd and I love it. The acting is very hammy and perfect for this kind of movie. John Vernon plays the skeptical cop wonderfully. I love his character, and his demise in this film is probably the scariest part of this movie. The kills are very creative, very playful, and I kind of wish that they would have killed a kid. They had an opportunity in one scene to kill a kid, but they didn't do it. I wish we could have seen a kid get turned into cotton candy at some point. The set designs in this movie are fantastic. I just love how colorful and vivid they are. They're very wacky and unique because it's a clown movie after all. The dialogue is corny, the characters are great, and it's just a very wild, imaginative, fun ride that flies by at a fast pace, and the score is awesome. All right, let's talk about a few honorable mentions before we get to my number 1. First up, The Brain. The opening was a terrific surprise. Unfortunately, the whole movie doesn't really live up to that opening. It's just very wacky and terrific, with a teddy bear bleeding out of its eyeballs and then all kinds of tentacles coming out of the walls. It's a great opening. The brain design is decent enough. It's very cheesy looking. A couple of quick things that I don't like about the movie, though, is the score from Paul Zaza. It just seems to be missing throughout most of the movie, which was jarring. There should have been a lot more music in this film. It just seems very lazily done. The main 2 actors in this movie aren't that good, so there's some bad performances here, and there's just a lot of chasing, so it just kind of gets tiresome after a while, a bit tedious. And it's also a Christmas movie that doesn't really capture the Christmas vibe and aesthetic at all. Like, you forget that it's Christmas after the opening. And I feel that they should have showcased a lot more brainwashing in the community, a lot more people in their homes killing their husbands, like that one scene with the chainsaw. There should have been a lot more of those kinds of scenes sprinkled throughout, and that would have upped my enjoyment even more. Second honorable mention will go to a truly bizarre horror comedy about this immortal snake lady, and that is The Lair of the White Worm. This movie plays out almost like an infection zombie movie, but with snakes. This movie has a few trippy, batshit insane, like, dream sequences that don't make much sense, and they're weirdly erotic. This movie is so weird by the end that you're just staring in utter disbelief. It's bonkers and weird enough to enjoy once, but it's not really the kind of film that I would want to revisit anytime soon, but still worth checking out. Number 3 goes to a movie that was directed by Lucio Fulci, but he got like sick and somebody else had to take over at some point, and that is Zombie 3. This might sound controversial, but I think this movie is more entertaining and quicker paced than Lucio Fulci's original Zombie. This movie does what Zack Snyder did in Dawn of the Dead, but better. We get a pregnant woman giving birth to a fully grown zombie, a hand ripping through her stomach and then tearing a woman's face off. How awesome. I found the inconsistency of the zombies to be quite fascinating, how there's just slow zombies and then fast zombies and some that are sneakier and smarter than others. This movie has so many illogical things in it and plot holes that just things that make no sense, but you just look past it, and I think they just add to the charm of the movie, honestly. The atmosphere of the movie feels very Fulci, half of it at least, because I think he shot half of it. There's a lot that seems blatantly ripped and copied from Return of the Living Dead, but even the music, the score, it has that same vibe, and it rocks. Next honorable mention will go to a hidden gem, a movie that just doesn't get talked about enough, and that is Pin. This is an odd, disturbing psychological thriller with a creepy medical prop mannequin. This movie stars Terry O'Quinn from The Stepfather, who's playing the dad in this movie, who is also a gynecologist, I think, or just a doctor, and he's a ventriloquist, and regretfully makes his son believe that his medical doll is a living person. There is a lot of awkward moments in this movie, and the fact that the dad is giving his own daughter an abortion is messed up. I like the voice they use for Penn. I thought it was very creepy and eerie sounding, and that scene in the car with Penn towards the beginning was pretty creepy as well. Just letting you know, this is a character study. This is not about like the kills or anything. It's not a slasher. It's just about this crazy guy, and the characters are engaging enough to keep you invested and interested throughout without all that stuff. I only wish that the third act would have been a little bit more suspenseful, maybe have a bit more of a showdown between the siblings. It just felt a little rushed to me, but the end scene is heartbreaking but satisfying. Final honorable mention will go to a movie from the director of The Craft, and that is Bad Dreams. This movie has a stacked cast of recognizable faces. You got Dean Cameron, Chainsaw from Summer School. You got Richard Lynch. You got the chick Jennifer Rubin from Dream Warriors, which is a movie that this movie gets compared to a lot, and I don't really see all the similarities there outside of like the setting, the suicidal patients, but I don't think this is like a ripoff or anything. I really like the wacky characters and just the funny dialogue, especially from Dean Cameron. I just thought it was really funny, and the kills, very brutal. There's a lot of suicides and bloody suicides and just macabre visuals, and it's very fast paced. It's got a weird soundtrack. There's like Guns N' Roses music playing for some reason. That's what I don't like about the movie. I would take that out, give it more of a traditional horror score, and I think that would really help it. But the whole cult opening, the whole cult aspect of the story, I thought was very creepy. There's a twist that I didn't see coming, which really added to the experience. I really like that they were able to fool me, and it just made the whole story extra messed up. And overall, I just think it's kind of underrated. It doesn't get talked about a lot. It's shot well, got some decent performances here, and it's fast paced and definitely worth checking out. So check out Bad Dreams if you haven't seen it already. All right, number 1. What is it? What is my favorite movie from this year? It's a very nostalgic movie to me. It's one of the first horror movies I ever saw, and that is Child's Play. It's the genesis of my love for horror and the slasher subgenre. Chucky is my favorite horror icon, and just like Ash in Evil Dead, he evolves more into the character we all know and love in the sequel, but he's still awesome in this movie. He's much more terrifying in this one. This is the scariest one of them all, and it's scary from multiple perspectives. It's scary watching it as a kid, around the same age, especially like when I did. I was Andy Barclay's age when I watched it, and it's scary to think that your doll could come alive and kill you, and it's scary watching it as a parent, thinking that your kid might be cuckoo, that he might be schizophrenic and be insane and kill his babysitter. It's just scary no matter how you watch it. I like that in this one, Chucky starts to look more and more human as time progresses. At the end, his hairline's like receding, his skin looks a lot more flesh-like, as opposed to the sequels where they kind of just got rid of that idea. I wish they would have kept that motif in the other sequels as well. I really enjoy the cast of this movie, and I think the child actor, Andy Barclay, played by Alex Vincent, does a really good job for like a 6-year-old kid. This is the franchise that gave me the most nightmares growing up. It's immensely nostalgic to me, and it just has to be my number one. Even nostalgia aside, looking at this movie critically, it's damn near flawless to me, and easily the best killer doll movie ever made. And shout out to Paul B., Jonathan Gagnon, SamC99, and Mikey, who chose this as their favorite. And apologies to anybody who I might have forgotten. If I didn't write your name down, I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. So, if you're curious what else I watched from this year, I'll let you know in the comments below or in the description box. So check that out. I'll list everything else that I watched that I didn't mention here in this video. So, what is your top 10? Let me know in the comments below. From worst to best, best to worst, however you want to do it. I'm looking forward to see your list, see if there's any movies that I didn't watch on your list. Be curious to see what else there is from this year that I think is so great. So yeah, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's just an opinion. You don't need to get butthurt about it.